Biswell here, host of the E-commerce Wizards podcast, where I feature top leaders in business and e-commerce. Today, I have AJ Yager, who's the co-founder and CGO, Chief Growth Officer of Praxis Metrics. Today, we'll be talking about turning your data into business growth, turning your data into something that a whole company can rely on, and how a company can become more data-driven, be a data-driven organization. And of course, we cannot talk about that without also addressing KPI, key performance indicator. Before we get started, we have a sponsorship message. This episode is brought to you by Mage Montreal. If the business wants a powerful e-commerce online store that will increase their sales, or to move piled up dormant inventory to free up cash reserves, or to automate business processes to gain efficiency and reduce human processing errors for our company, Mage Montreal can do that. We've been helping e-commerce stores for over a decade. Here's the catch. We are specialized and work only on Adobe Magento Commerce. We do everything Magento. If you know someone who needs design, development, maintenance, training, we got their back. They can contact us, support@magemontreal.com, or go to magemontreal.com. That's MAGE Montreal.com. Now, we got connected, AJ, through a mutual contact. So I want to give a shout out to Robert Rand of JetRail for the hosting. So thank you, Robert. And let's get started. I'm happy to have you here today, AJ.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a long time coming, but yeah, I'm excited to dig in. And Robert's such a great guy. I'm really appreciative of him. He's connected us with a lot of people. So let's do this.
All right. So I think a very nice way to start, you can explain perhaps a success story on how to use data to scale a business, something that you've lived, so people will better understand today's topic.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love stories. Telling stories with data is what it's really all about, to help us get to the end point of what we can take action on. So let's. I know data is not sexy to everybody, but we're going to do our best to make it as sexy as possible. And so I'm going to start with, right at home in our own business. We're an agency. We are a data agency. So we will help work with e-commerce brands to help them grow and scale with their data. Now, sometimes it's not about 100 metrics. It can be about one metric that is the most important. And over the number of years, we had seen inside of our own data, every year we would go do a data summit where Megan and I and our leadership team would get together and look at all of our data from the revenue side, from the transactional side and the project management side. And we were wondering why on earth our profitability just kept shrinking. Now, agency service-based companies have lower margins generally, but we still were operating at too low of one. And as we dug into the data and we took the time to analyze the data as a team and democratize that data, we found out there was one metric, just one thing if we could shift would change everything. And that one metric came out of the fact that we were delivering excellence to our clients, and we love to make sure we were over delivering. But what we didn't notice was that our data engineers were actually being a little too nice. So when you're in startup mode, you want to just over deliver for everybody and get such a great response and a great testimonial. But as we were maturing, we kind of forgot about that was startup mode. Even though we were delivering great value, our data team members were going over in unbillable hours. And so we looked at how many unbillable hours there were as a whole that we were not monitoring on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. And once we looked at it, we said, holy crap. We didn't say crap. We said something a lot worse, but I was like, wow, we need to really, really fix this. So what we did was we said, okay, every single DE, every single week, we're going to focus on minimizing the amount of unbillable hours. And long story short, we had a hockey stick like this. The next few months got us to over 33% profit margin as we were watching this one metric. So that's a quick one to get us started. But sometimes it's about one or two needle movers, we like to say, that you can focus on that can make everything else easier or unnecessary. Any thoughts on that one?
Well, it's a great example because you're using your own company's growth as an example here. So for sure, I can totally relate to that, to over deliver or a mix of that or scope creep or lack of scope control and project management, stuff like that. But I can totally relate. It's a critical move, and what worked when you were, let's say, 5 or 10 person will not work when you go to 25 and up.
Yeah, exactly.
Because growing, which you did. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. And feel free to tie up more success story here as we're talking about this. And like one very important metric, you're talking about the one key metric. I have another customer in mind they're not measuring their lifetime value per customer, highly successful, like 8 figures of sales per year online, telling them you got to start measuring your lifetime value. So let's talk about that. Like, how do you measure it? First of all, how do you apply all this stuff? Because, if you're thinking long term with lifetime value, you might be okay with acquiring a customer at cost, or perhaps even losing a little bit. But then you need to be very confident in that data, especially if you go with a path that you lose a little bit in the short term, saying I'll make it back in the long term and I can grow this way. Especially if you're not venture back and it's your own money as an entrepreneur.
Right.
Right. So let's talk a bit about that.
That's a great one. So, and actually that was the next one I had in mind as well. So before we jump into the story, to kind of answer your first question, we look at lifetime value over a cohort analysis, like over time, based on when that customer first comes into your funnel or to your e-commerce store, whatever you want to call it. And I think a lot of people just look at lifetime value, like you were saying, whether they have a long runway of budget or a small one, they say, oh, well, we think we can afford to, acquire a customer at this price, and then we'll get it on the back end. But not a lot of people dig into, okay, what does that actually mean at the end of the day, from a not only marketing spend point of view, marketing cost point of view, but we like to also factor in COGS, cost of goods sold, to that as well. Like, are you truly earning that money back, or is it just getting stale, or are you in the negative? So lifetime value is literally one of the most important metrics and we can talk about this later on. We call them the desert island metrics. We have about 5 desert island metrics that all e-commerce should track, and lifetime value is one of those. So here's an example of how lifetime value can work really well. So we had a client, DanetteMay.com. She's in the information digital marketing side, but she also has supplement brands and e-commerce brands underneath her big kind of bubble. She went from 15 sales per day to 315 sales per day with one key metric, and that was lifetime value, understanding their true lifetime value. So they're a client of ours. They were struggling with a particular funnel that they had built. And now when you're building funnels, sometimes e-commerce companies don't really build funnels, but basically it's, where are you sending people into your landing page? Are they converting from there? Are they adding it to the cart? Are they going step by step through your entire, all the way to the end point, which is the transaction? Well, they were bringing in like 15 sales a day, and they were getting ready to shut down this funnel that they had spent a lot of money on. And before they did, they reached out to us so that we could help them find their true value in the long term. And what they didn't have was the whole picture of their lifetime value. So they were looking at it on the first 30 days, but they didn't know 60, 90, 120. So we helped them discover what the real lifetime value was of their customers, that it was much higher. So they thought that their cost per acquisition of clients was that they had a cap. And so that cap was lower than they expected. So they weren't spending enough money to get enough people through there, and then not realizing that they were making $200 or $300 on the back end at day 60, 90, 120. So what we did, we said, look, once we saw all the data over 60, 90, 120 days, we said, you guys are earning way more than you think. You can afford to spend more money to acquire a customer on Facebook. So they bumped that up to $15. And literally within a week, they started going from the 15 sales a day all the way up to the 315 sales a day within 2 weeks. This was a funnel that they were going to cut completely just by knowing truly. And we went through and built the algorithm. We went through and did all the math and made sure that this was accurate. They didn't know what they didn't know. So they weren't able to spend enough to acquire the customers to get this funnel profitable. But once the metrics worked for them, this made them millions of dollars, this one funnel. Now, how many times do e-commerce brands or digital brands cut things that they think aren't working? I think too many times that we cut things and we think we know the data, but have you really actually gone through and mapped this out all the way through and made sure all your costs are aligned as well? So that's just one story of how they went from 15 to 350 sales a day with lifetime value.
That's amazing. So of course it's leveraging the power of Facebook ads in this case, or Google ads, but knowing how much you can actually spend, and that you'll be profitable with it because you trust your data and you did the exercise of actually having that data truly being tracked properly.
Yes. And the big challenge is that people there's a lot of different ways to measure lifetime value. There's no one exact correct way. And so I think a lot of companies just have troubles bringing all the different pieces of data that need to be combined into a cohort analysis over time. And so that's one struggle. But then on the other end, once you've got it pulled together, you've got to make sure all the costs are pulled in and your tracking is in place. So we can talk about tracking all day long. That can be a whole nother separate podcast. But if you're not tracking the right data to be able to answer the question for lifetime value, then you're never going to have that true lifetime value there. And so that means your Google Analytics setting up, your whatever platform, if you're on Magento, like making sure that everything is tracking to answer lifetime value, which are several different metrics, and we can get into that later. But I just want to make sure, like, if you have the data, if you're collecting all the right data, you can make sure you have your true LTV.
Because another question, like a very tactical, very detailed question here, is simply like, well, lifetime. How long is lifetime? So, well, it's lifetime, but in your case,
how do you define
like, when is lifetime? So the cutoff, you seem to be putting it like 120 days in this case with this example. Some people may go with a year, or in some other cases, like an IT provider selling large managed service plan with 3 years contract. You might think over 3 years as being the lifetime value of the customer. So if I understood correctly, what you're saying is you choose where you set the endpoint of what's the lifetime value for when you want to calculate return on investment, but just don't think about the single transaction of the first purchase.
Exactly. It goes so much further beyond that. And you're so right. If subscription products, some companies will have initial product up front and then they can upsell upsell into a subscription product. Sometimes they're just like a subscription box company. So that's going to have a different type of lifetime value calculation. So you get to define the parameters. You get to define how you want to look at lifetime value. Most time we do 30, day one, 30, 60, 90, 120 days. That usually is like a good fit for most people. But then each company suffers from terminal uniqueness. And that's where we have to tweak the data and the visuals to make sense for each brand. But you've got to be making sure that all your data points that you're collecting from your CRM, from your e-commerce platform, from your tracking side, even from the merchant side, are you going to be factoring in taxes? Are you going to be factoring in shipping, refund? Like, there's a lot of parameters. I think it's really important for the marketing team or the whole company to define what that means to them, and then start there. And if they're able to take action on it, that's wonderful. And then they can tweak it as they go.
Okay, so that seems clear enough to me about the lifetime value KPI, key performance indicator. You said you had 5 KPI if you're a desert island KPI. So what are the other 4?
Yeah, so the desert island metrics are this. Number 1 is revenue. I mean, it seems like a basic one. It is the sexiest of them all, and it's really the scorekeeper. So revenue, cost of goods sold, COGS. This is something that I think many brands, now the more mature brands probably have this loaded in, but many brands I think are very focused on the sales and the marketing side, and they don't really talk much with the finance side. And so bringing in true cost of goods sold, whether you're in Quicken or Xero or NetSuite, whatever they're using, that needs to be matched up and be looked at very, very carefully. Not just the CFO, but I think that also needs to be disseminated across the whole company, especially the leadership team. Number 3 is return on investment or return on ad spend. So if you're and maybe you're not running Google ads or Facebook ads, but what is your return on investment for the marketing that's going out? 4, lifetime value, LTV, CLV. And then last but not least, the allowable cost per acquisition. For e-commerce companies, that is what we have found to be the 5 desert island metrics that you've got to not only have, make sure are accurate, but also be taking action on consistently.
Very interesting one. So, okay, the first one, revenue is clear. The cost of goods sold, this has, of course, an official accounting definition, but in your definition, how you count it, is it just directly the cost of the product? You sell it for $100. I can buy this thing for $50, so my cost of goods sold is $50. You don't factor in any kind of overhead or other stuff on it?
Well, to us, it's understanding the cost of your business, and it's the only way to stay afloat. So there's an economic principle that states as long as you can cover your variable costs, you can eventually scale the business into profitability. While this may seem initially, counterintuitive, it actually holds true. So if you can exceed your variable costs even slightly, then you can eventually scale your business to profitability. However, if you can't meet your variable costs, your losses will actually grow as your company scales. So the natural question is, what are my variable costs? The answer is anything that will scale as you sell more and more of your products. That includes commissions, materials, shipping, credit card fees, things like that. So we've had clients who've had a hard time drilling down and finding their true variable costs. because they purchase materials and ship in bulk, let's say. This makes it difficult to drill down into the individual costs. However, if you leverage a like robust business intelligence tool like what we use, like many clients probably already have, it can perform complex calculations to drill down and assign costs to each individual item in the shipment based off of weight, for that one example. And just having a firm grasp on all your variable costs and your COGS allows you to better analyze the next metrics that we talked about, ROAS and LTV and all that. So
okay.
does that help?
Yeah. So let's dig into that a bit more. So you have your base product cost. My example was $50. It's something you sell for $100, and then you have your variable cost on top of it, your typical overhead, the staff running the company, sales commission, and all that stuff. And then, of course, that begs the question: how do you know if you're selling whatever it is you're selling, a camera, a phone, a cosmetic, something? How much of that overhead, let's say you have $1 million a year of overhead, how do you distribute that across all the products? So you're saying that you go by weight as one possible solution, that you're sort of just like doing
as an example. Yeah. As an example, it's getting it down to those individual variable costs, not just, this is one big one chunk sum.
Yeah.
And it takes a little bit of massaging. It takes, a CFO or a financial person on your team to help break this stuff out. But the more detailed and more separated it becomes, the easier it is to connect those to the things that are going to help with the return on ad spend and things like that, to be more accurate.
Yeah, the manufacturing accounting to find your true cost and reallocate the cost per part produced and so on. Yeah, it's challenging. Okay. And let's say right now with COVID, there's more and more companies being either entirely running remotely or partially running remotely. Like, how could that data-driven organization benefit in a case of running a remote company?
Well, this is something that I like to say we were doing before it was cool. Before we formed Praxis Metrics, when I had a marketing agency, we've been working remote for a long time. And it's an incredible advantage. One, you're saving a lot of costs on having a physical place for people to be, which I think can be distributed to employees, team members, profits, or given to charities that are wonderful. So I think there's a great opportunity to lower those costs. And one of the things that worked really well for us to attract talent was that we were remote. So many of the I'd say many of our team members, we've had out to 35, many of them came to work for us because we had a remote culture. Literally on our careers page, it was about, look, we don't care where you are in the world. As long as you're showing up for your meetings, you're getting your work done, your priorities done, you're reporting and have good communication with us based on these standard operating procedures we've set up and based on our schedules, and you manage your time zone well, we want you to be out there exploring and being free and living your life now, not waiting for a while to go take a vacation for only a week or two. And so we also, for attracting talent, it was more like, look, we're giving you more than 2 weeks off. If you want paid time off or you want just more free time, you have a more flexible schedule. And so I think remote for us was just about attracting talent, especially before COVID. People loved that. They were having to do the 9 to 5 and had to be at their desk or do these commutes. And so people were absolutely loving that. So I think that's one big part of remote work. Obviously, remote work has its challenges, but with the tool sets we have these days, Zoom or comparable products like that, amazing project management tools, Google Suite, whatever you're using as your back office, allows us to get so much done so quickly and have access to all the information. And that's, I think it's really the only way to go. I do not see cities, and I'm really curious what's going to happen with all the buildings that have been built and in cities as people are leaving and realizing, oh my gosh, they don't have to be somewhere in person all the time. What's going to happen to our economy there with the commercial real estate? That will be interesting.
Yeah, we purposely did not invest in commercial real estate just before COVID. We invested in residential real estate.
Yep. So did we.
Was safe. It was already in our place here in Greater Montreal. We have a very high level of occupancy in South Shore. So anyway,
I will. If I could throw in there's things we've learned by being remote, especially Megan and I as the owners as well. Like when we're traveling, there are a lot of tidbits and tricks and tips to make sure that you have in place so that you don't miss meetings, so that things don't get screwed up. There's a lot of planning and preparation that it takes to be, I think, effective and efficient as a remote employee or team member. If you're not just staying in one place, if you're bouncing around a lot, there's a lot more to consider. And so we do our best to help educate and train and teach our team members, hey, when you're going somewhere, when you're doing this, here are the things you should prepare so that your remote working session does not affect the professionalism or the delivery of what you're doing with the clients. Because a lot of our stuff is, well, face-to-face technically with clients on calls like this. And so that needs to be efficient. You can't just miss things. You can't have crappy internet, although sometimes it happens. You got to be prepared.
Right. So I did not hear a lot of difference though from running, like in terms of data tracking, from running the agency, let's say locally with everybody going to the office. But I do understand very well the perks for recruitment, because you will recruit some people who would otherwise work at way higher salary for the very large agency, 400 people and up kind of agencies, or even the worldwide agencies of thousands of people that tends to offer very high salary, but very bad lifestyle sometimes. So then the smaller agency can attract top talent by offering that flexibility. We were doing the same, but more on a part-time basis, like 2 days a week at home and the 3 days at the office. That was before COVID. Now with after COVID, I mean, there are a lot of people who never want to go back to the office. So that's
so true.
It's going to be completely different. But like, what else do you track in terms of running a successful agency or company? With people working remotely, is there anything else that you're tracking that's more specific?
Yeah, happiness. Happiness
is
a great thing to track. It is a measurable.
How do you track that?
So we have a Google sheet, or we have a piece of our software of our project management. We are always checking in and doing a mini survey at the end of each week for our team members. And we have one for our clients and we have one for our own team. We want to make sure that our team is not just going through the motions, that they're not just, that they're not, because we can't be physically by them and kind of pick up, Bob, what's going on there? You don't look too happy. People can kind of put on a face when they have this on, but then, or not be on the screen and we can't know what's going on. So we put in mini surveys in place, and check-ins, one-on-one check-ins with the project manager who's in charge of that person, to not just talk business, but like literally understand their happiness, understand their engagement. Is anything going wrong in their life? So the data we're collecting on our team members allows us to, over time, see are our team, are they generally happy? Is this seasonal? Do seasons have anything to do with this? Do people get happier or more stressed out during when for us, like as it's building up to Black Friday, for the end of the year and Christmas sales and all that, it can get pretty crazy because we have a lot of promotions and we have a lot of people that want their data before and then after Black Friday. And so we have more stressful times during our year. And so we want to check in with our team members to not only make sure they're doing the best work they can, but that they're happy and they're enjoying their work. Because as we're assigning data engineers to our clients, we need to know that we're assigning the right person who's got not only the capacity, but then they're like really engaged and really happy and excited to do what they're doing. So happiness is one thing. And another one is for our clients, we're looking at green, yellow, and red, just a status indicator on clients. How are they doing? Not just are they getting value, which is super important, but also like, how are they feeling and experiencing us? We want to know and quantify that as much as we can, because if we can understand that they may be happy with the results, but they're very disappointed in communication times or other things like this, these are little questions we go through and ask them once a month, because weekly is too much for clients. We're pulling that data in and putting it into a database as well to understand if that needs to kind of trigger any other people to step in. So there's just a couple of examples.
Well, that's pretty good. So you do survey your clients like once a month, and is a good response rate on this?
That varies. Many times what we do is, instead of just sending them an email and saying, hey, here's your monthly thing, click on it, it's on one of the calls. Hey, it's that time of month. Let me ask you some real quick questions. And then you type them in. The DEs or a client success manager will go ahead and fill it out for them, and put that through. So no, it's not 100% at all, but at least, 60, 70% is better than not having that insight and reducing the result of like a client being unhappy or a team member being unhappy and it being like so close to us, but we just couldn't see it being remote. So that kind of data helps us understand it. And I mean, it's not a measurable data thing, but we do our best to get our team together and have fun. Oh, I'll tell you one thing that was really, really huge. This one's awesome. We started, a lot of companies have Slack or Click or these little things that they use to intercommunicate outside of email. When we created a daily gratitude journal This was huge. So we had 3 questions, how am I doing? How am I doing in my personal life? How am I doing or what am I thankful for in my personal life? What am I thankful for a team member or in business? And then what am I, thankful for that I've done for myself? And then we had an open-ended. So every day people go in and fill out a gratitude journal in one of the channels in Slack. And when we had that happen, we saw involvement, we saw encouragement, we saw engagement, and just happiness across the board go up. That was really, really cool to see happen. And we just got more and more people excited on their meetings, and they're just showing up happier, which is one way to see. Even though we could see in the surveys, we literally could feel the energy from a remote distance of how much happier people were, and they were talking about it. And they could call each other out and give each other awesomeness like shout outs. And that was a big boost for remote work.
Oh, no, that's pretty cool. So every day they were filling a thankfulness or gratitude
journal.
What I'm grateful for, what I'm grateful for, what I'm grateful for. Every day, Everybody does it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. It was really fun. And we could see, we were tracking who was doing it, who wasn't doing it. And the ones who were not doing it were, it makes sense, but they just were not as engaged, and didn't feel as much as part of the team and the culture. And as soon as we said, look, you need to be doing this, just start getting it. And some people just don't like to share that information. But we found out it wasn't that they didn't want to do it. It was that they're more private and more personal. And so we said, well, as long as you're writing it down somewhere, do it, but start sharing and seeing how this affects you. And then we saw them just start to like it. So that was a really fun project.
Well, you're working with data scientists, not just marketing people here.
Exactly.
So data scientists, programmers, can be quite introverted.
They're kind of introverted, and in their, I don't like to say in their dungeon, but they're definitely more introverted. So yeah, that was helped them get out of their shell a little bit.
Yeah, you can ask them, what do you think? Oh, I don't know. And it's like, you gotta help them a bit to get out of the shell, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
I can understand that. Okay. And let's say if we're back to merchants in e-commerce, like a merchant that's running his company, like what kind of mistake should they avoid in terms of either tracking data or not tracking data to grow the business?
Okay. Well, let's talk about some specifics. Tracking data. If we can't build, we or any other brand cannot build dashboards that make sense, that are accurate without the right data. We can't just make stuff up, right? So I call them leaky buckets. Part of having dashboards and visuals to make decisions from helps you see where the leaky bucket is, where the holes are in the bucket, so you can go back to the tracking team or whoever's in charge of that and make sure, hey, we're not tracking these pieces of data. And that could be something like like UTMs, urchin tracking mechanism, which is a Google term. It's a free thing to do, but even large brands we find aren't organized in what they're doing. They're not consistently doing that. So UTMs is a huge topic that we talk about, and making sure that companies are using Google Analytics in and of itself as good as they can. And then also sometimes it's CRM. Sometimes they're literally like salespeople or customer service people are in the CRM and adding in the information. If they're missing fields or they don't know, they're not trained to input information in there manually, that's missing. And then it's also dirty data. And so going back and fixing those SOPs, those standard operating procedures for companies, and letting the people who are entering that information understand the importance on the back end of like, hey, when you put this information in, we actually can do this over here and make a better decision, which makes us more profitable, lowers our costs, things like that. So from a tracking standpoint, it can be manual or it can be automated inputs that need to be, I think, assessed on a monthly basis. Quarterly is probably plenty, but like we kind of have checks and balances when our customers to kind of audit their tracking monthly, especially depending on how many campaigns and marketing, campaigns that they're doing a month.
And in terms of tracking it, I don't know if you do this, because when you do tracking for, let's say, ad spends or a very wide marketing campaign that's on all channels, on Facebook, it's through SMS, text messages, it's through emails, it's all over the place. Then, how do you assign which of those channels gets the credit in terms of, the conversion or even an affiliate tracking in some case, because they saw, let's say on text message, they saw also your ad after on an email, and then, they clicked the Google ad and then they bought. Like, who gets the credit and all this,
Right. And when you're on Google and Facebook and YouTube and you're paying money, all these things, each of those platforms want to say, nope, it was us. We did that, right? They all want to take credit, but that's not possible because there's a first click, there's last click, there's about 6 or 7 different models of attribution that you can use. And I think more data mature companies who have had a lot of tracking, a lot of data there, first, how do you attribute it? So first, you've got to make sure that each channel is being tracked in a specific way, every single thing consistently, right? So that comes, UTMs can be used, affiliate IDs, AFIDs, or affiliate programs can also be similar to UTMs. Sometimes SMS and all that, they usually have their own tracking built into it. So we need to make sure that, okay, whatever modality or technology you're using for each of these channels, that data is being able to be pulled out and combined into the database for all your marketing, and then it's labeled, tagged, and it's accurate. So those who are in the top part of the marketing, the front end, it is all up to them to make sure they're tracking it right, so that can all be compiled into an attribution model that allows them to see, okay, so what we see is what's happening is we're going on podcasts here. We've got the organic content, we've got our Facebook advertising, and we've got our blasts, that SMS text blasts that go out. Well, all of these are coming through. We can see with the attribution windows set up, you can actually see where people are bouncing from and to create that best journey. So if they saw an article in a blog, then they watched this video, then they came here and got a retargeted ad, then they finally got an email from us and bought. That's the journey. Now you get to decide first click, last click, who you're going to tie that to. But we have a lot of clients that have a big email list, and once people are on there, they're blasting out offers, sales, and things like that. So they gained that client from, let's say, the blog. Then the Facebook reiterated that and they saw it, but they actually purchased once they got really good copy from an email copy. So it's not necessarily which one is always the best. It's like, what is that journey that we want to push people through so that we have the highest conversion rate? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So you'll decide literally like, okay, the guy received an email. Now I want to send him a text message. Now I want to try to see if there's a way to retarget them through other ads and so on.
Exactly. It's getting enough data and looking at that journey to say, oh, there's a pattern here that looks like, and this goes back to lifetime value too. If you can have all of these different channels tracked really well, then we can see, look, is there a higher lifetime value associated with the clients that come in through a content blog or from a Facebook ad, let's say. And literally in our cohort, lifetime value cohort, you see day 1, day 30, day 60, day 90. And we're able to, when you have the data, right, click on, okay, I want to see from a specific channel, Facebook, what is the lifetime value of those people that came through these specific campaigns in Facebook, and compare that to the ones that came in through the organic. And, for example, we've seen many times cold traffic is a lot harder to convert and get that loyalty. But we're saying, look, Facebook cold customers are converting, let's say 35% less than the ones that just came in from these organic posts. Okay. So do we want to do a less ad spend and then take more of that and get on a lot more content posts, find a lot more affiliates out there and whatnot? And we've got a client that literally stopped spending so much on paid media, said, looks like we're maxing out, we're more than breaking even here at this spend. We're going to take more money and buy a ton of these blogs that have great content that we can push to our best funnel. And that absolutely like quadrupled their business by just going and taking that money and redistributing it to that journey that worked better for them.
That's great. That's great. And let's say, because here you're talking about tracking the customer, like where you first encountered this potential customer. Let's say he came through that blog post here, and that was more valuable as a customer journey than if he came through the ads from Facebook, let's say in your example. But are you able, with all the privacy stuff that's going on right now, are you still able to track correctly the user across the journey?
Great question. It used to be the wild, wild west, right? And up to a few years ago, things have been getting a lot more intense. And unfortunately, every month that goes by, it's almost like we're getting, as marketers, more and more limited, as brands, more and more limited to the data that we can pull. So number one is data ownership. Now is the time to make sure that on every platform that you're advertising on, everywhere that there's data, you need to be extracting everything so that you can have it historically. Because if you don't, and those platforms go away or they start removing fields, you won't be able to get that again. So number one is data ownership. get your data off of that thing. That means you have somebody manually export it, set up automated email exports, have the API, have a company like us or whoever's running your BI, make sure that's all going into a database. You can own that data for your lifetime and go back and see what's going on there. And then also with PII, personal information, PII, personal information, I'm forgetting the other I, you're not able to track certain things. And so there are other ways around that. It's getting harder to track it, but if Google Analytics is set up right, your CRM, if you have your tracking set up correctly, you should be able to gather the right journey that's going on there. But honestly, it's getting harder and harder. And my tracking team, they're the experts. They're the ones that would be able to answer that better for you. But with Google Analytics 4 coming out and a lot more enhancements and changes in how we're tracking cookies and all that, it's constantly changing right now. So it's going to get harder and harder. So the sooner you get to know your journeys and have all your tracking in place, all the UTMs, do a Google Analytics audit, do an attribution audit, and get this fixed, that's the competitive advantage you're going to have over your clients, or over your competitors.
Right. So is there any other topics that you'd like to cover in terms of being a more data-driven organization or data-driven e-commerce company?
Yeah, I think that it is really important to, once you have the data and you've got dashboards, let's say maybe you're at a point where you've got some dashboards, democratizing that data and making sure you spend the time, or invest the time with each of the departments to have at least weekly data stand-ups, weekly meetings, or assign a portion of your meetings that are with all your department heads for where people are owning a certain metric or metrics, reporting on them, literally standing up, pointing at the dashboard, or having it up in front of everybody and talking about what's going on with each of those. Many of our clients, the ones that have actually democratized the data, put it up on a dashboard, or made it easily accessible to all the different people on the team, from the lowest level people to the highest leadership team, seem to have the most increase in revenue, in profitability, and lowering their costs, because they're not grabbing the data and just kind of keeping it for themselves for certain departments. When other departments start to understand what each other are doing and how it affects each other, that's when there's true holistic growth that can happen in the company. So I think the sharing of data, making it very easy for everybody to understand, and making sure the whole company understands, look, if we can change this one or two needle moving metrics together and understand how each of those play a part, then you're truly becoming a data-driven organization as a whole. I think that's an important part to talk about.
All right. Well, that covers it for today. Thank you very much, AJ, for being here today.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me. It was fun.